to close us out here, I am so delighted to have these three women on stage to help us get a better understanding of this new focus I think a lot of us have on fair trade and ethical fashion, apparel. They know a lot more than I do, and looking forward to learning with all of you from these three. And I will let our moderator provide further introductions for our speakers this afternoon, but it is my great pleasure to introduce our moderator for today. Andrea Reyes is a fair trade advocate, educator, and small business owner. She's the chair of the New York City Fair Trade Coalition, the founder of A. Bernadette, a fair trade fashion brand, and she teaches fashion, marketing, international trade, and business development classes at a number of colleges in New York, including Pace University and the Fashion Institute of Technology. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Andrea, who will introduce the rest of the session.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for sticking with us. We have, I think, the last panel for this weekend. It's been an honor meeting so many of you from across the country, across the world, getting to know about the different areas that you're advocating for. And the passion has definitely restored a lot more passion in me, and I'm excited to go forward and go back to New York and kind of share all these stories and all these experiences that you guys are having with fair trade in your own backyard. So thank you. A little bit more about me. So as Susie said, I am the chair of the New York City Fair Trade Coalition. I've only been the chair for about a year and a half now, and it's taken a little while to get my feet wet and to see where our focus needs to be placed. And I think over the past year and a half, talking to people about fair trade chocolate and coffee, talking about fair trade building supplies, obviously fair trade fashion. But here, it's been a wonderful culmination to kind of see that there really does need to be a group that's focusing on fair trade fashion. And I'm happy that the New York City Fair Trade Coalition can fill that space. Because as I said in my opening talk on Friday, is that so many of us in New York City are coming into this because we have worked for the not good fashion industry. We worked for the fashion industry that was exclusive, for better or for worse. The fashion industry that segmented different areas, and you had no idea what the person next to you in your cubicle was doing. The fashion industry that when a factory collapsed in Bangladesh, many of us had no idea where Bangladesh was, even though a majority of our production was being done there. So over the past couple of years, there's really been this wonderful movement, like I said, of sustainable fashion, ethical fashion, fair trade fashion, whatever we want to call it. We want to be inclusive and really work with people who want to constantly question their ethics. Because at this point, no one is doing it 100% correct. It's almost impossible to do it 100% correct. So all we can really do is try and do better, right? You can't be sustainable. You can only be more sustainable. So I invite you all to become a part of the Fair Trade Coalition. We have this wonderful program now called Fair Trade Advocates. So it's people like you, people who want a company who's going to support them and stand with them. And what we do is we send our Fair Trade Advocates on different events to cover them. And that way now they can go up to the panelists after and say, I'm here on behalf of the Fair Trade Coalition. I'd love to ask you some questions. Can I take you out for coffee sometime and learn more about what you're doing? And we can really post those stories and promote those leaders and ask those tough questions. At the same time, it gives a platform. On our website, if you become an advocate, you have your picture, you have your LinkedIn profile, so now people are able to connect your name, your face, and what you do. And I think in whatever industry you're working towards, it takes a certain number of years, a certain number of events coming to things like that, where people can really piece together, and that's where true collaboration and partnership happens. So I invite you all, you don't have to be in New York City. Thank God we have something called the internship fibernets to connect us all now, right? Woo! So without further ado, I would love to introduce our panelists, and I'm very excited. We're going to have them each come up and do a presentation about their companies. And then we're going to have a little discussion about retail, technology, innovation, all those good things. And then we're going to open it up for some questions. So if you have any questions, please write them down. We'll take some time after for you to connect with these leaders. So instead of reading their bios, I asked them what their fair trade company of choice was, or product of choice right now are. And talking to Anjali, she said that Skunk Funk was her favorite fashion brand at the moment because they're working with zero waste. So I invite you all to check that out. And Helena said that her favorite item right now was the chocolate bark. Has anybody consumed way too much of that chocolate bark? Me too. So I don't think we decided who was going to, do we know who's coming up first too? Helena, you're up first? Okay, great. So I'm going to let her take over and introduce her company and all that she's done. So please help me give a round of applause introducing her.
Is the So good afternoon, everybody, and here I'm once again, and well, I'm going to make 17 years into 10 minutes, and I really hope that I can add a few strong stories in it as well, so that you can understand my journey better. So my company started in 2002. A little background about who I am and from where I come. So I'm basically from North India, came to Pondicherry, which is in the southern part of India in Tamil Nadu, at the age of 3. So I grew up, and the reason why we came to Pondicherry is because my father was looking at an alternate education for his children. And in Pondicherry, there is a township called Orville, where I grew up from the age of 3 to 12, which is based on human unity and on a philosophy that has been that has started by Sri Aurobindo. So I come from a community of human unity, and I think the seeds of who I am today were sown when I was 3 years old. I completed my studies in Pondicherry and got married to my present husband, who is an Italian, born and brought up in India, and we were in Italy for 10 years. After completing our stay in Italy, we decided to go back home, and when I went back, for me, I realized that two things really mattered, and that was education for children, and that's where change could happen, and women, to see how we could create a platform for them to, for enabling them to become leaders of their own lives. So I started an NGO, or I really actually started working with NGOs around Pondicherry, but I think within a couple of months, I realized that was not my cup of tea. So when somebody asks me, you know, when did you really get started on fair trade? I say in 2002, when I started the company, that was the DNA of my company. I started with one tailor, a pattern master, 8 handloom, and 1 vegetable dyeing unit. In 2004, by that time I had already about 8 to 10 tailors. I started hearing about farmer suicides. Cotton farmers in India were committing suicide every half an hour. For me, that was very distressing, and I really wanted to know the why, because till then I was only working from the yarn onwards, and I wanted to know what was happening in the cotton farms. And going there, you know, spending good 3-4 weeks with the farmers. In 2004, sitting on a farmer's land whose husband had just committed suicide 2 days back, I took a decision to move into organic cotton. And it was at the same time that I took the decision to move also towards industrial, to see how I could move and change things in an industrial level. So becoming mainstream, but with fair trade terms and in organic cotton. Today, although the company has grown larger than just organic cotton, we talk about sustainability and sustainable fibers as well. So it was in the very, very early stages when I was working with the cotton farmers and started to work with the women in Pondicherry, in the factory, that I realized that what really mattered to me was sustainability. And sustainability could come only if we could be scalable. And that is when we could create impact, not only in the lives of the farmers that we were going to work with, but for the environment and for the women that we were going to employ in our factory. So this is how my journey started in 2002. So if you see, our vision is to be leaders in sustainable manufacturing. We want to, we want to move the needle in the industry. We want to meet change makers in the industry today, which has not been an easy journey so far, but definitely a journey worth taking and going forward. The certifications we have organic, we have fair trade, we have WFTO, and we have got an UpMade certification. If you see, we are maybe one of the only very few companies in India who have both fair trade certifications, the FlowCert and the WFTO. The reason being, FlowCert is more mainstream and industry, but we realized that we needed to include the artisans and the smaller producers who were going to be part of the fashion industry as well. And therefore, we felt that WFTO was a very, very important partner for us in this fair trade journey. I would like to take 2 minutes on a new certification that we acquired last year, which is called the UpMade certification. Now, we are manufacturers, and today brands are talking about post-consumer waste. It's a very big issue, and we're talking about it a lot. So I kept feeling, what can I do as a manufacturer to make a difference? So when we came across this certification called UpMade, we decided to get ourselves this certification because they talk about pre-production waste. So what is happening with our waste, how much is the consumption, how to reuse our lay markers efficiently, how to reuse the fabric in making another garment. And what we realized was that brands really didn't have the time, the designers within the brands didn't have the time to think about what to do with their waste. So we are now working very closely with a designer from Estonia to see whether she can help brands to utilize their waste by making collections for them. So this has been an important certification for us. Also, to what we realized is that the brands are doing so much from their end. How as manufacturers we can add value and sustain them in their efforts going forward. We always believe in working in partnership, in people, in a collaborative manner, not in a, exclusively all by ourselves, because we feel that many people, many expertise coming together can make us more successful. So these are some of the strategic partners that we have. Women on Wings is a group from Netherlands. Their mandate is to create 1 million jobs for women in India. We work with them very closely because that is a vision that we also have for Mandala, where we want to eradicate poverty by giving a skill and ensuring that we can also provide jobs for the women. There's one more we work with very closely, and that is called Job for Youth. This is a national NGO in India, and they're working with physically disabled women, especially, and we want to work with them closely because we feel that within the manufacturing sector, we definitely can give them a skill as well as an employment. We realize that talking about sustainability, time just flies by. And you're doing all the talking. But we really wanted to see how we can make active planning for ourselves, an action plan actually for ourselves over the years, so that it's not only about talk, but it is also about execution in the ground level, in the grassroots, and see results, and then create an action plan for the years to come. And so we created a sustainability plan for ourselves for 2030. And by taking, so the inspiration came to us, like the benchmark that we wanted to create for ourselves was Higg Index. It is the highest benchmark, let us say, in the textile industry for measuring your impact in the social as well as the environmental. But it's too big for us. We are very small today. And so we thought is how we can break that down into smaller steps year by year and then achieve that. So we made sustainability priorities for ourselves, starting from the environment, social well-being, and the economic welfare of our company. And we aligned it to the 10 principles of the WFTO, 10 principles of fair trade, because then it becomes very tangible, it becomes very visual. And when we do it within the factory or within our supply chain, actually, which starts from the cotton farmer, the ginning, the spinning, the weaving, the dyeing, and the printing, and then comes to us finally for manufacturing, we thought that it's very important that we work together on this with all our stakeholders, starting from the cotton farmers. So the first of it is opportunities for disadvantaged producers. We work very closely with farmers. Now, when I say farmers, what gender comes to your mind? We work with 270 women farmers. So men have only two work in the farming. They go and buy the seed and they go and sell the cotton. The entire work of sowing, tilling the land and plowing, everything is done by women. So we work with women farmers and we take commitments to buy their cotton once a year whenever the harvest is there. We also work with smaller groups of artisans who are into the embroidery and embellishment that is very much used in the fashion industry, but a very exploitative area because a lot of child labor is used in those sectors. So we ensure that we work with groups and we enable them to not use child labor because the fact that we are working on fair trade terms. Transparency and accountability. Our entire supply chain is transparent. We take all the brands that we have and we introduce them to our supply chain because we feel wherever we are today is because of our suppliers. And without them, we wouldn't be where we are today. And for us, for our brands to know who we work with is also very important because it gives them confidence that if we are talking about certain compliances which are either fair trade or organic, these companies are able to provide that in a consistent manner. Oops. Yeah. Fair trade practices. For us, fair trade has been, as I told you, the DNA of the company, and we do the 10 principles, embedding the 10 principles with our workers. We ensure that they get fair wages, they're paid their salary through the bank accounts, they have an ATM card. We ensure that it's not only with our manufacturing, but also within our supply chain. And we are working now very closely with Fair Trade to see how we could become part of their pilot program in ensuring that we can work towards living wages, because it's not something that can happen overnight. It's a process that will happen over time, but brands have to come on board to make that into a reality. Fair payment, as I told you, we are working on fair wages, and now I'm working very closely with 2-3 brands on seeing how we can bring living wages into our supply chain. And for us, gender equality. So here I'll tell you a very quick story. This was in the very early years. For me, it was important that if a woman can produce as much as a man, she should get a fair wage, at least the same wage. So we had about 10 tailors by that time, out of which 8 were men and 2 were women. And they produced the same as the men, and I said, we will pay the same wages. The small unit at that time with 20 tailors, 10 tailors went on strike because the men did not want to accept me paying the women the same wage. For 20 days they went on strike, and what happened was the women came to me to say, pay us 50 rupees less, but let's start working. And I said, no, I will not compromise, because if I compromise today, as I go forward, they will keep asking for compromising. So it is actually changing mindsets. It is changing the mindset of the woman herself to say that you need to stand up for your own dignity and for your own self-respect rather than just compromising. One compromise means 100 compromises every single day. So that's for us why we say it has to be a fair pay. It is not just because it's a part of fair trade principle, but it is about self-respect and dignity for the woman. No child labor, I mean, that goes without saying. Being a fair trade company, the ginning especially is a very, very child labor intensive space. So we ensure that we are working with fair trade ginners, fair trade spinners, fair trade cotton growers. So our entire supply chain, we ensure that, there's no child labor in the supply chain. No discrimination. This might seem very simple, but in India, there are subtle social pressures like from which caste you come, from which religion you come. So for us, we are very, very careful that we ensure that we embrace all religions and all castes within the factory. So that's a very important thing, and we did win a gender parity award by the Center of Indian Industries in India. Good working conditions is a must. I mean, if we want to give respect, if we want to give dignity to the women, working conditions comes as one of the main requirements. So they have working conditions, they have, buses that bring them to the work. We ensure that the workspace is safe. There's no hazardous chemicals that are being used within the working spaces, but which anyhow we do not use because we are organic. So even the dyes that are used in our dyeing units are GOT certified, so azo-free dyes. And so we are ensuring that everywhere, in every supply chain area, we are taking care that our workers are taken care of. Capacity building, very, very important. Eradication of poverty. As I was mentioning earlier, the Indian government gives a lot of skill, lot of money for skill development. But all skill development happens which is not industry level, and therefore job opportunities cannot be made. So therefore, we are making an internal skill development program that is of industry level, so that as soon as they complete the program, they are then put into the production. Last year, we trained 194 women, out of which we hired about 150 women. So the others were drop out because they got married and things like that. But capacity building is a very, very key component of our company, because the way we would like to grow. Today, we are about 300 workers at Mandala. Our aim is to create employment for another 300 in the next 2 years. So for us, capacity building is a very, very important component in our growth. Promoting fair trade. Fair trade, as I said, is about human justice, human rights, environmental justice, and about businesses being also profitable. Now, it's very important to educate your workers on what you're doing and what is fair trade all about. So we ensure that we take them with us. We ensure that we encourage them to understand what are their rights. For us, it's also very important that they grow and they're empowered by what fair trade means. So we do have a lot of events, awareness programs, campaigns. We are also Mandala has been an initiator for ensuring that Pondicherry and Auroville become two fair trade towns. And that would be like making us the first fair trade twin towns in the world. And that is very important that our workers are part of the campaign. So they always are very eager to participate. We also ensure that they understand the plight of other women. So if you see, every time we have for the Rana Plaza, we ask our women to light a candle and maintain silence, so that there is solidarity of what is happening to women maybe in other parts of the world. So that is also something that we really inculcate in them. It is not only about themselves, it's not only about us, but it is also about the others. And for that, we have also organized we have a group of women who make sanitary napkins, and our raw material goes to making our waste goes to making their raw material. Now, once they've made sanitary napkins, they need somebody to sell it to. So what we have told them is, why don't you come and present it to our women? So that's an NGO supported by us, by giving our waste is their raw material, and their final product is again then bought by our women. So for me, this is circular. This is circular. This is giving back, So and just to a little deviation, today in India, when I'm talking about sanitary napkins, it's a very important issue. Today's 21st century India. The women in rural India still use sand and ash and recycle cloth from other women during their periods. So supporting this for us was a very, very important cause, because our waste can become somebody else's product. So this is about promoting the fair trade. Talking about the environment, we work with organic cotton, we work with recycled PET poly. We are seeing that, our waste, for example, all our fabric waste is converted into hang tags and labels for our brands. All our waste is converted into our personal stationery inside the company. So we are ensuring that there is no waste. We become a zero waste company. By doing that, we also have awareness programs with our workers. So we ensure that our workers are aware of what we are doing. Otherwise, they cannot support us in our efforts. So I would like to just share with you two small stories. One, what is organic and what is non-organic. So we had requested an NGO to come and talk to the workers about organic, about what can be reused, what can be recycled. And in the end of his presentation, he showed a 1-minute video. And it was a video about a cow that was being operated. It was a very, very gruesome video. And the cow, the doctor was taking out plastic from the cow's stomach. And 40 kilos of plastic was taken out from the cow's stomach. And I was watching this whole video with 300 women with me. And when that video completed, there was a pin drop silence in the audience, pin drop. And, I just could hear sniffs because I myself had tears in my eyes. And I didn't know, what to do, whether I should look around. And in that silence, one woman got up and she said, "From today, I'm not going to use plastic bags. I'm going to use only cloth bags." And one by one, behind her, all 300 got up and made that commitment on that day. I was the last to get up because I was so moved by their commitment. This is a commitment towards environment. It was nothing that I taught them. We just shared a video. And then we stitched together, bags for ourselves. And the women now use their own cloth bags. So it is also how through the company we can create bigger impact in their personal lives is also something extremely important for us. There's one more story that I will share, which also has created a huge impact. And there is a misconception that businesses and social are two separate things. Conventional businesses, like I was mentioning earlier, they earn profit and then they have their CSR, which is the budget that goes for good work or social work. But how they have earned their money to come to that contribution, nobody really questions. They only see the big CSR money that is going for good work. What I feel, what I believe, and what I feel and what I've seen and experienced in Mandala is profit and good can go together. And we had an awareness program. We do a lot of health-related checkups, like eye checkup, dental checkup. There was one checkup that we did was on cervical and breast cancer, because these are, we know that every year we need to go to a gynecologist. But in India, to go to a gynae is a taboo. Women from lower classes do not go to gynecologists. They don't know who a gynae is. So we invited 20 doctors into the company who did first an awareness program, where we included their husbands and their families in this program. And after that, they had checkups, which we did not limit only to our workers, but we extended it to their families. So we had nearly 650 women were checked for cervical and breast cancer. And as I was mentioning earlier in my earlier presentation, wherever women are in factories, we have very high rate of absenteeism because women have to take care of their families, their children, and there's huge resistance from their family to send them to work. But after this program that we did, we noticed that absenteeism had reduced from 14% to 11%. And within 3 months, we were wondering what happened. And when we started talking to our women, they said, because you extended this program to our families, today the family feels that Mandala is has much to contribute to the family behind as well. So what happened is being inclusive, it became, you're gaining that 3% absenteeism that was reduced is added to your profitability. So doing good is not necessarily only CSR. If you do good for your workers, for us, recruitment is a big investment and a big cost and a big energy. But if you can give them training, if you can give them livelihood, if you can give them fair wages, respect, dignity, attrition rate with our workers is 0. And even unmarried girls do not want to get married. So it's a big problem on my shoulders to tell them, no, get married because marriage is really nice and look at how happy I am. But they don't have happy marriages, And so many of our women workers are single mothers. Alcohol is a very big problem in India. And they're single mothers or their husbands have got other wives. So that is the other reason why we thought, when we are talking about fair wages, when the brands are making such a huge effort to get fair wages for our workers, then it's very important that this wage goes to the right use. And that is not in alcohol, but in creating better homes, better education, better future for their children. So this has been our effort. Sorry, this is going back. Sorry, am I going forward or going back? I want to go forward. Sorry. That's the last slide, so. This is a little bit about the impacts that we have made along our supply chain, like the cotton farmers that we work with, the ginners that are organic and fair trade certified, our spinners who are working with solar energy and wind energy, and they're also 100% organic and fair trade. For us, being fair trade certified for a spinner and a ginner is a very big deal because it's a very expensive infrastructure, but dedicated only for fair trade and organic is a big commitment. If you see our dyers and printers, they have their wastewater treatment plant. 70% of their water is reused for their dyeing and their gardening or their toilets. So for us, these are commitments. It's not only about fair trade and the certificate on the wall. It is what commitment the supplier is making beyond just the certificate. It is the philosophy, it is about the movement, it's not about a certificate. If you see our weaver, they are supporting 3,000 children in a school. So that's a big commitment, and for me that is fair trade. So it's, yes, they have the certificate, but they are going beyond. So for us, creating partners who are not just there, but are there for the cause and for the movement of fair trade is very, very important. So we look at creating more impact and ensuring that we can create sustainable jobs. And all the effort that I see here, our days, somebody asked in a previous, one of the previous sessions that, what are your challenges and what are your happy moments and sad moments, I can tell you that every single day, seeing every single woman coming to work is a happy moment. Because you know that you're making a difference. You know that you're making change somewhere. Difficult moment, every single day is a difficult moment because you know you're not doing enough and that there is so much more to be done. So there is no retirement for me, I see. Thank you.
Thank you, Anjali. I have to say, it is so wonderful to be here and hear these stories on the ground. I work in a more big brand perspective, and one of the great things that's been so enriching about these couple of days is all these different pieces of the puzzle coming together. So, okay, there we go. Thank you. In thinking about opening remarks, I actually want to come back to a question that Andrea sent me when we were discussing the session we were going to do, and that is what fair trade means to me. I first became aware of fair trade. I realized when thinking about it, I couldn't actually remember, but it came through chocolate and coffee, like many of you. And I knew it was a good thing to do, like shopping local, buying non-GMO, going to farmers markets. But if any of you had asked me how it was good, I couldn't have told you the details. I really trace my awakening, as opposed to a mere awareness, to a trip I took in February 2014 to Sri Lanka, where I joined one of our production teams to go and assess several new factories there. The country had just come out of a civil war, and there was some really, really good on-the-ground stuff happening. Now, my background is not in production, and it is not in supply chains or in manufacturing. I joined Patagonia 19 years ago, and my history there has been building product lines. So some people call it being a merchant, being a line manager, but it is deciding what goes into the line, what are we going to bring to the consumer, and when are we going to launch it. And at Patagonia, we work on 2 large product lines a year. They were about 1,000 different styles. And I have the best job because I work between product creation with a materials department, with a fabulous design group, and then I also work with the folks on the executing side, so production, with factories, and then with our storytellers or marketing to communicate what we're doing to the customer. So Patagonia is a very interesting company. You are probably fairly familiar with it. Started in '73 by our founder, Yvon Chouinard. And he was really depressed about the way things were going environmentally, and built into the foundation of the company a really amazing North Star, our mission statement, which essentially is build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, and inspire solutions to the environmental crisis. And I would say he is way more concerned about the environment today than he was even in 1973, and the company continues to focus very critically on this mission. In 1993, Patagonia was instrumental in introducing recycled polyester into the industry and working with Malden, using recycled bottles post-consumer to create new fleeces. And this is a really critical part of our industry. Not many people realize synthetics essentially come from fossil fuel. So from mining and drilling out virgin inputs, we then create all kind of synthetics in the apparel industry. And we also have on the flip side, really durable product, but a lot of end-of-life issues because plastics are not biodegradable. So the great part about using recycled inputs is you're solving both issues. You're not using virgin inputs, and you're using up end-of-life plastic. So that was one of the first things that the company embarked on. A few years later, they did a very disruptive transition from conventional cotton, which I have to call chemical cotton, into organic cotton. And as I mentioned earlier, although cotton is only 1 or 2% of agricultural land farmed today, it uses an incredibly disproportionate amount of pesticides and herbicides and has very detrimental effects on not just the environment, but also people who work with it. And many of us think of it as a very natural fiber, but it is incredibly harmful. So Patagonia actually worked with farmers in the California Central Valley and gave them loans because we couldn't actually source it on the open market at that time. It has grown since then, but I'm very sad to tell everyone that organic cotton is still only 1% of all cotton in the world today. So in addition to polyester in cotton, there are many other interesting fabrications we've been working on. A few years ago, our founder said to me, I really have an issue with sort of being in this business about consuming. And should we even be creating products for consumption and being a part of that industry? He said, I understand when you're making a technical product for someone going climbing, someone going surfing, someone going fishing, you need a best-in-class product, and we can really bring that to the table. But why should we make sportswear, everyday wear that all of us wear? since it's so ubiquitous, you can get it anywhere, the world really doesn't need another piece of sportswear. And that was such a great challenge to those of us who worked in the company, and we began really struggling and grappling with that question of how can we embed sustainability and keep evolving it in what we do. And in addition to organic cotton and recycled polyester, we've really spent the last few years scaling up things like down and wool and looking into those supply chains that involve animal welfare, a lot of complex questions around them. We now use a lot of recycled wool and recycled down. Also looking at fibers like hemp and tencel that are very responsible fibers as opposed to others that are not. And really committing ourselves to only using fibers in our apparel that is on this journey to increase sustainability. We decided to drop we wouldn't want to make anything that we couldn't embed an environmentally responsible story into. So that has been an interesting journey, not easy at all. On the social responsibility part, Patagonia, I've been really impressed, are very committed to a robust social compliance program. We don't outsource auditing in factories. We have a huge department of people around the world who are really on the ground, making a tremendous difference. But going back to that story in Sri Lanka, it really struck me, visiting factories, how oblivious I was to the thousands of hands that go into creating everything we wear. And just brilliantly talented people in pattern making, in sewing, in all the details of bringing together a garment. The standard garment, dozens of people will work on in various different stages. I came back and I just thought that we have to be able to do more than what we're doing. And it's interesting because I think often at this point in life, when you come to a point and you want to make a difference, the speaker this morning said it so eloquently, you kind of think, where do I fit into this equation of making something different? And I work in a company that grapples with trying to do something better every day. But fortunately, I had a colleague who actually suggested fair trade. And we, through one step and another, we set up a phone call. And I'll never forget, it was with Maya at Fair Trade, and we began speaking about how could we institute this program. I thought it would be a very, there'd be epiphanies and, rainbows, but it was very much like, what's the definition of fair trade? What are all the different fair trade organizations? But one step after another, we came to launch 11 styles later that year that we worked with a fair trade factory in India, Pratibha, one that we had been working with but had gone through the fair trade process with them. And that was the beginning. And we are not the first brand to launch fair trade apparel. There were several brands prior to us, but we've been the first brand to really scale it. And I'm very grateful to everyone at Fair Trade USA for their incredible support around this. But to date, Patagonia, the programs we've instituted are impacting 32,000 workers in 15 factories in 8 countries, including the US. So it's been a really dramatic expansion on top of a lot of the other great work done in the company. And probably at this time, I should give you a little nutshell version of how it works. Fair Trade USA will assess factories we use and determine what the premium that we as a brand, Patagonia, will pay to the workers. The premiums go directly to workers. They do not go to factory management, something I've definitely had discussions with factory managers about, but straight to workers, facilitated setting up in a fund. And what is so meaningful about the program is the entire factory will get to participate. Not just the people who are sewing Patagonia garments or fair trade garments, but everyone in that factory. And certain factories where we have mills vertically integrated with factories, everyone in the mill and the factory will get to participate. So it could be thousands of people or hundreds of people. They will go through a process of electing a fair trade committee and get input and decide what to spend the money on. And that's really where the program comes to life, because across the 4 years we've been doing it at Patagonia, we've seen some incredibly interesting and very unique programs in different places. One I've spoken to before is childcare, which is such an interesting choice in that it impacts certain people, but not others, but everyone sees the community benefit and the value of bringing that out. We've had a lot related to hygiene, as Anjali spoke about, a lot to foodstuffs, to bicycles. The earliest one in the factory in India was actually a very large number of workers, so the amount for each one was fairly small, since it was just a few styles we were doing at that time. And the workers chose to buy raincoats because they would get wet walking in the monsoon to work. So very simple things that make a difference. And I think something else to add is factories were very hesitant, certainly some of our apparel factories, but they have come back to us and said how powerful it's been in their factory space. Worker retention has improved, and they have often stepped up and wanted to also contribute at the point of creating where workers decide on what they ultimately, how they want to determine to use that money. So that's been a wonderful impact. But I think, there's a lot of impact on 32,000 workers, but fundamentally, it's impacted me so profoundly as well. I'm deeply moved hearing stories from my fair trade friends, from Anjali, how it really does change lives. I've spoken to factory managers around the world and have often had that question, why don't you just pay us more money and we'll pay workers more money? But it really speaks to two things. The one is that incredible element where the person is empowered to decide what they want to do with that premium and to do it in community. I think that is a very, very key benefit of fair trade. What else do I need to tell you before we finish? The one key part, I think, is some of the challenges that we alluded to this morning, is about communicating to people why they should care. We live in a world with thousands of messages coming at us every day. There is a lot of greenwashing as well. I think the important thing about fair trade is it is a third-party certification that proves that something is happening. There's transparency, and we can go back and check through that. I think a lot of greenwashing is undermining a lot of what's going on in the food and in the apparel industry at the moment. But the storytelling part is key. I'm going to actually finish with a video that we made last year at Patagonia to try and explain to our customers the importance of fair trade. Patagonia is a complex organization that has a lot of other initiatives going on, initiatives about wild places and protecting public land at the moment. Also sustainability and importance around environmental sustainability. So in thinking about how do we bring this message about social responsibility through in a way that is impactful and authentic, and that is the video that we will run shortly. In closing, I just want to say, anywhere that you are, in any town, in any company, in any department, in any university, in any college, we really need transformation everywhere. And I just would encourage people to start where they are. So thank you.
Pues Fair Trade o el comercio justo es un primer paso. Toman conciencia de que los productos no nacen en la tienda donde los compran, sino implican la labor de personas que están detrás de eso.
Mi mayor miedo. Que mis hijos no tengan un futuro que el que yo tuve.
Quedar un poco desempleado.
สูญเสียคนที่เรารักไป
สุขภาพความลำบากสำหรับลูก
Estar en la oscuridad. Para mí el comercio justo pues es una oportunidad implementar el desarrollo para el bienestar de todos los trabajadores.
นะคะจะมีเขาคำนึงถึงความเป็นอยู่ของพนักงานมากขึ้นค่ะ
condiciones laborales y medioambientales.
เพราะว่าส่วนหนึ่งของการที่ขายสินค้าแฟร์เทรดได้เงินส่วนหนึ่งก็จะกลับมาหาเรานะคะ
A mejorar mi casa.
ได้เรียนทุนสูงครับ
Como por decir, despensa, algo para comer.
Estás ayudando no a una persona, tal vez a una familia o a una comunidad.
Monto adicional que es administrado por el comité de trabajadores de la entidad elegido de una manera democrática.
Despierta en ti algo de que puedes ser líder, hablar y
Expresarme,
también decisiones.
dar mi opinión. Al hacer una prenda de comercio justo, siento que me está valorando mi trabajo y mi esfuerzo. Para mí es la mayor alegría como trabajador.
Hi. Okay. So thank you so much. It was so inspiring to hear both of your stories kind of coming from different ends of the supply chain. And at Patagonia, I was so happy to hear that you're having those tough conversations just about what is the point of producing more items. And I myself had that same kind of, you know, does the world need more stuff? But the world needs, we're always going to consume. So we need to replace those items. So we are needed to replace those unethical, those unsustainable items with these fair trade items. So we have to constantly brand and give more reasons for our customers to buy. And I love your stories about working with the women there and how you have to be inclusive. And I love that you're connecting it to the Sustainable Development Goals. And all of you should definitely do a little bit of research, because I know myself in New York, I'm going out to a hotel, for instance, to want to do an event. And they're like, okay, so what SDGs are you highlighting? And it's amazing that they're taking those steps. So the SDGs in combination with the fair trade principles, a lot of companies, everyday companies, are really looking for us to connect those dots. So I think it's a wonderful marketing tool. So I kind of wanted to skip along for convenience sake and maybe move on past the definition of fair trade. I've prepared some questions about design, technology, retailing, inventory. So the first one I wanted to ask was about the design process. New design ideas are emerging. So there's something called DFE, Design for the Environment, or zero waste pattern techniques and more. How has the design process changed or evolved?
So what we have noticed as manufacturers, that design is a very, very important driver for change and sustainability. You know, designers usually have no time. Within the brands, designers have actually no time to go deeper into sustainability unless they have a sustainability manager who's guiding them towards it. And as manufacturers, we feel that that is also our responsibility. And ensuring that the design drives sustainability and manufacturers support it. So we've seen that lots of the brands have come to us. We are working on zero waste designs with them. We're ensuring that their waste is then upcycled and made into other garments. We ensure that even the waste that is fallen is used and, you know, becomes a raw material for another new product. So we do feel that design, and we encourage designers to come on board. We have a small design studio that is working on sustainable fashion and sustainable design and ensuring how factory waste can be used and designed differently, upcycled and recycled and reused. So we do have a small design studio where we encourage designers to come and intern with us and work on innovation that can help, you know, lead us to a much more sustainable environment in the production space.
One idea that I've started to think more and more about in the design process is some designers are actually thinking about we're making this dress, and it may not be a bestseller. So if we can't sell this dress completely, is there something else that we can make out of it? Will this dress eventually end up being a pillowcase or something like that? So even thinking past the original design idea, I think is such an interesting concept to really kind of close that loop of you know, the inevitability of it becoming waste. So I wanted to ask Helena about technology. So technology has given us a view into many injustices. I know I've thought long and hard about globalization, and now we see a lot of protectionism, and is it better for the environment to have protectionism in certain senses? So where do you think technology and globalization is taking us, and are you optimistic about all of it?
Ooh, that is quite a question. Is this on? Yeah. You know, technology and globalization, I mean, these are double-edged swords. They can be used for good, and they can be used for a lot of damage. In thinking about this, I wanted to share a story with you. Patagonia has a small division that funds small startups that are trying to do good, and many of them are around technology, and technology can be really powerful. And one of my favorites recently is a group of young guys who were traveling in South America. They're surfers, and they were very disturbed at all the fishing nets they saw stacked along the beach. And when speaking to the fishermen, they were saying how once a net has a hole, you know, it can't be repaired. I mean, these are synthetic polyester nets, and they were just stacked up. So these guys began collecting them, getting through technology, getting them repurposed and turned into skateboards. And their brand is called Bureo. And we began partnering with them and are working hard to bring into our supply chain, through their work, buckles for equipment, brims for trucker hats. But I think in looking at even a really small example like that, that does give me optimism. Globalization, too, is a huge subject. If I dive into it from my perspective and job at Patagonia, we're a global company with, I have colleagues in Japan and Europe who I communicate with a lot. I think, in a sense, I was reading an article in the New York Times this week about globalization. The globalization of like goods and services traveling around the world happened a decade or two ago. The door can't be shut on that. The current question we really have to speak to is information and what that means. And I think focusing certainly in our own space on doing it in a very productive way brings us a lot of benefits.
Great. So talking about innovation, Anjali, I wanted to ask you, we see innovation in fabrics, design, retailing, and more. What innovations are you specifically excited about? I know you mentioned some natural dyeing. What should we be looking out for?
So two areas that we are really focusing on. One is extending the fabrics in sustainability, and the other is seeing alternative ways of processing, dyeing, and printing, which is using less of water. So, you know, like laser printing. So new technology that is coming up where less water is going to be used, and also new technology that is coming to make alternate fibers possible. So these are two areas where we are focusing on. And as manufacturers, right from day one, we've always been innovative in the fabrics that we can propose to our brands. You know, initially everybody thought that only single jersey could be made, but we had given a huge variety of also woven fabrics that could have been made in organic and fair trade terms. So that's always been something that I'm very excited about, and that's my value addition to brands, because R&D and all, that's our responsibility also to see what we can value add for brands that are making already a huge effort to ensure that they're keeping the consumers happy.
One documentary that's really good, I encourage you all to watch, is called River Blue, and it talks about a lot of what she's speaking about, all the new technology, because we love our stonewashed jeans, but a lot of that consumes a lot of water, so they're looking at alternatives.
Can I jump in on some innovation? Because I think that is one of the most exciting things about our industry. I'm going to go with some sort of bigger picture ideas that are out there. The one is really innovation of biodegradable plastics. and I think it's really long overdue, but having fibers that can biodegrade like natural fibers, like a cotton or a wool, and it doesn't seem like it could be too far off, but that would be something exciting. I think the other one is around regenerative agriculture and biodynamic agriculture, and if we think of something like cotton and that agriculture, moving it a step beyond organic into regenerative, and the incredible possibilities there are to sort of mitigate climate change and sequester carbon through that. So I'm keeping fingers crossed.
One fabric that we have just come up with is a reclaimed fabric that is post-consumer waste that comes back to developing countries. It comes back to India as well. So your shirts, which are black, you know, they're put together, then they're shredded, fiber is made, and no dyeing is required. So it's already dyed, and that is called reclaimed cotton. So we've worked a lot and very closely with some of our manufacturers for doing reclaimed cotton, but it is a short staple fabric and a short staple yarn, and therefore the fabric is not too strong. And there we have blended it with a 20% recycled PET polyester to, you know, bring it up to the quality that brands. So this is where we always try to be innovative and collaborate with suppliers who are also looking at innovation.
Yeah, it's such an exciting time. I think you can see right now with the fabrics and all the things that are happening. And I mentioned earlier on Friday, you know, they're making fabric from banana or orange peels. They're actually growing fabrics where you would normally grow from kombucha. Something I'm really excited about is bacteria that will eat plastic. So for our chemists in the room, anytime I meet a chemist, I'm like, let's work together. Let's figure out a grant to find some sort of detergent to put in our clothing, and each season it makes it biodegradable. I think a lot of the problems is not necessarily slow fashion. It's coming at, maybe we need to make it faster. Has anybody ever seen one of those greeting cards that you put seeds in it and you can like plant it on a flower? Maybe we need to do that with a t-shirt. Maybe it's gonna be a single-use t-shirt that it's an organic cotton, you put it and outgrows a flower, right? So we need to think of these crazy ideas because who knows what's possible. So I wanna open up the floor to you guys to ask any questions. How do we want to do, maybe I will, I'm mobile. Ooh, we're just gonna leave that. Oh, you have it? Okay. Oh, I was gonna move around, get excited.
Hi. First of all, I think you both are amazing. All three of you are amazing. But this one's more for Anjali. Did I say that correctly? Anjali, I'm so sorry. Okay, well, earlier I was in your breakout group and you were talking about the women that are working for you and how you try to empower them. And I went on a little trip to Tanzania this summer where we were trying to empower the women there, and you were saying that they didn't want to be empowered because it was just very culturally not the norm for them. So in what ways were you able to empower them and get them to want to step up and be part of what you were bringing to them in a polite and like acceptable way?
I think, as I was mentioning earlier, is be an example to them, you know. They don't want because they don't know, and it is the unknown which actually doesn't allow them to step up, you know. As I was mentioning earlier, I was a promised bride when I was 12. You know, I had to step up for myself. I had to come a long way to where I am today. I had to, so it's not easy for a woman to just come up because you are empowering them. They have to go through many social situations. They have a lot of layers that are there that actually will keep pulling them down. And a woman's worst enemy is a woman. A daughter's worst enemy is her mother. You know, it's her mother who will not allow her to go forward. So what I have seen for myself is I have been an example. And when I talk about my life and about what I have done, that becomes like encouraging for them to say, okay, if she's done it, why can't we? And so these are all, it's a very slow process. It's nothing that can happen overnight because they have been suppressed for so many centuries. it's only one woman being an example for another woman being an example for another. So it's, we get into the village, but not with 50 women from the village. We start with 2, and then 2 become 10, and then the 10 see, 10 more. And so it's by example only that we can do. And what I said in one of my sessions earlier, you cannot create disbalance. You want to be an activist. I would like to bring change tomorrow. I would like to eradicate poverty yesterday, but you can't do it. It has to be gradual. You can't be too disruptive, because then you're creating an unhappy situation for the woman who has come out of something too fast, and then she's totally lost, because it has to come from within and very gradually. So you need to strengthen the woman from within rather than just empower is a word that I don't believe in, because I feel that every Indian woman who is there today has got the power, otherwise she wouldn't be able to be alive. So they have very tough situations.
Yeah. And I just wanted to kind of jump in on that. From working with artisans in Uganda and living there for a few years, and then coming back here and working with female entrepreneurs here, I saw so many parallels. Not everyone's an entrepreneur, right? The women in Uganda, not everybody wanted to make decisions and be empowered. Some people just wanted to push a button. And it's the same thing here. And we need both types of people. And looking at those parallels once again of, I see in this room so many women who are empowered but still have, maybe there's mother's voice in their head saying, I can't necessarily do it. So a lot of things that you're speaking about are things that us as women, we have to combat no matter where we are. Somebody had just told me that a man will read a job description and he'll look at one thing and say, I can do it. And a woman will read a job description, there's one thing they can't do, and they'll say, I can't do it. So you have to fake it till you make it and say, yes, I can do it, and kind of figure it out as you go along. So for those of you who want to go over to different countries and help, just know that you can empower women right here in your own backyard.
Hi, I just want to say thank you, and you're a great inspiration for us, and I'm very excited to see every conference I go, there's more and more women in the front. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to expand a little bit on the environmental part of fair trade, because I feel like a lot of people think that it's social and environmental. So if you could expand a little bit on the environmental side of it.
The question is
for both of you.
That's a good question, because the challenge about sustainability and building responsibility is so vast, and sometimes in trying to solve one thing, we create an issue somewhere else. I feel very grateful to be in a company that has grappled for so long with the environmental side, and almost the more we dig into it, the more issues are facing us. We're doing a lot of work at the moment around life cycle assessment, which is a big acronym, LCAs, but it really is about choices and what should we choose. We can go into factories that are fair trade and make amazing products, but are we making the right choices with the fabrics we choose? Do we choose naturals? Do we choose synthetics? What are the implications of using all those? So I think it's a very integrated discussion when we're talking about sustainability, and fair trade is this incredibly strong program on the social side, but we really need to take into account environmental impacts as well, because we can't really build one pillar strong without the other.
Back there. And I guess I'll just add to that, So often I'm trying to break down sustainability into different categories because so many times people don't know what the word sustainability means. And we use it in our marketing and our customers say, that sounds nice. So I like what you were saying earlier about their North Star. So pick your true north. If you're creating a new company, your customer is listening to you for about 10 seconds, and I may use recycled materials, work with ladies in Uganda, perform empowerment, fair trade, this or that, but I have to pick. I have to pick maybe 2 things that I'm going to talk about in that moment. Otherwise, I've lost them. I've confused them. So am I vegan? Am I recycling? Am I vintage even, right? Vintage we can think of as reusing materials. So I think we need to narrow it down a bit and be okay with not using the word sustainability or sustainable all the time.
And I think another part of it is we need to create products that are relevant, that are compelling, that are best in class and benchmark products. I think one of a challenge is building a lot of sustainability and responsibility into what we do, but if you're creating a product that can't find a market or is it doesn't. So I think that there are a lot of challenges, and I really love the intersection of like running good business and doing good. I think business can be very influential, but it's very sort of key to check a lot of boxes.
I really loved your note on regenerative farming, and I'm just wondering, are either of these businesses looking into hemp? Because there's so much from the hemp seed and fuel and toilet paper, all these other things outside of just fabric, like where you guys are feeling or how you're feeling about the future of hemp and fair trade.
So Patagonia loves to use hemp, and we have used it for several decades. And I've learned that, unfortunately, industrial hemp farming for fiber was banned in the US several decades ago. So unfortunately, we can't source our hemp here, and we actually source it abroad. And one of the big focuses at Patagonia right now is really about pushing to change that legislation to be able to grow industrial hemp here, because hemp is a fantastic crop. It literally is drought tolerant, it doesn't destroy the soil. It has so many great benefits, especially around regenerative agriculture. So yeah, I'm very interested to see what happens in the next couple of years around industrial hemp in the US, but definitely a lot of work done to try and get it to be grown here. Again.
Well, that is our time for today, so thank you so much. Thank you to our panelists.
I'd just like to say thank you very much, Billy, for having me here. It was a real honor for me to be here and share my journey with all of you. I go back with a lot of hope because what I see is, you know, we are there and you are here, and working together is when we can make it really happen. And thank you so much, all of you, for doing everything that you do. And it really gives us a lot of hope and gives us courage to go on with our work back end as producers. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Billy, once again, and all of you to have me here. Thank you.